Hello, you're joining us on IndiaPostLive.com, India's first live conversation web television. Well, one of the very popular expectations that people had from the new government was a control of the price rise. Of course, there were other issues like unemployment and all of that, but price rise was a very big issue in favor of the Modi government. They wanted a change in that. Yet over the weekend, we got this news that there was a hike in the diesel prices. So is this a continuation of the subsidy reforms of the previous government, or should we be worried? There was a lot of hype that the first thing the government would do is bring down the prices. Can we expect that to happen? So to join the conversation, I have with me in the studio Mr. B. Pulla Rao. He is a renowned economist. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation. I also have with me Sanjeev Ratnasingh, who is a senior journalist. Thank you so much, Sanjeev, for joining. I also have with me on Google Hangout Rakhi Suryaprakash. Rakhi Suryaprakash is a founder director of Sunshine Millennium, and we are going to try and get her to join the conversation as soon as we can. All right, let me ask you first, sir. You know, this entire thing of over the weekend, this diesel hike, 50 paise, of course, this was something that the previous government had been doing since January 2013. Every month, a slight hike till the subsidy issue is cut. Do you think this is a continuation of that?
Not at all, and I don't want to sound like a BJP spokesperson.
Okay.
You know, at the risk of defending them and trying to find some space. It's a fashion nowadays, you know, you defend from outside and then you become an insider. So they have done a very reasonable thing, because the minister immediately said we have raised it only by 50 paisa, so that the investors don't get a wrong message that we are going back on all the reforms.
Right.
And that was a very calibrated approach.
So it is a continuation of the subsidy reforms, right?
But there is something else, if I may add.
Yeah.
You see, 50 paisa is not much. It's very little in the present context. And they are taking other steps. If the rupee becomes stronger, let us say by another 5% or 10%, then automatically your subsidies will go down, because what you import, the price will crash of fertilizers and oil.
Right.
So this is a message. If they are doing this with it's a well thought out plan, then one has to appreciate it, which the other government did not do so, because the other government raised your price of diesel. At the same time, they never thought to strengthen the rupee so that the imports become cheap. If the imports become cheap, oil, which we import 50 to 60%, and probably, you know, I'm giving just off the cuff figures, say 35, 40% or 50% of our foreign exchange earnings are going on oil. If the rupee becomes stronger, say, instead of 60 rupees to a dollar, it becomes 55. Automatically your oil bill goes down by an enormous amount of 50-60,000 crores. Then you don't have any more subsidy needed.
In fact, Sanjeev, the number is, the magic number, you know, is about 56, right? Because, you know, once the rupee becomes stronger and it's 56 to the dollar, then there will be an automatic deregulation of fuel.
Yeah, of course. I mean, then, you know, it works both ways, because on the one hand, you know, you're importing, but the price is less. I mean, we are paying almost 318 crores every day as far as, you know, subsidy of fuel is concerned.
Right.
So imagine if you just minus 5 rupees on every you know, on the import, so that figure will go down. But you see, the larger picture is that, you know, such decisions need to have some sort of political sensitivity, which was lacking in the UPA government. You know, we saw the UPA government, you know, just brazenly saying we are going to set up a mechanism and they will decide what to do. Sometimes, you know, rates were hiked by 2 rupees, 2.3 rupees, almost 3 rupees.
Yes.
But in the NDA regime, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister, prices were hiked. They were hiked almost about 13, 14 times during 6 years. But it was never done in such a brazen manner. It was always done by 50 paisa, 60 paisa, almost to a rupee, so that, you know, people never felt so bad about giving that money. Eventually, it went up by 5 rupees. But it was a gradual process in which they did it. And I think, you know, as far as the policy goes of cutting down imports, that will carry on. We will see these prices being, you know, going up.
In small doses at a time?
Yeah, but they will be in smaller doses, so that, you know, government has enough time in which they can do the other homework, like Dr. Rao was saying of, strengthening the rupee. So that will all help as far as, this whole issue is concerned.
All right.
I may add to what he has said.
Sure.
Whether this government is going to be that sophisticated, we have to see it. One of the things what I would look for is the LPG pricing. If they start getting into this complicated thing of middle class, one price, this price, that price, then I know they have no sophistication. Because it doesn't work. It didn't work what the UPA government tried to do. And I would say rather than create corruption, create confusion for a few thousand crores, 15, 20,000 crores.
Right.
Okay, you limit to 12 cylinders or 13 cylinders, 9 cylinders, and you control the double connections and all of that. But don't distinguish between middle class and lower class, and don't go too far on this one issue, the political sophistication which Mr. Sanjay was talking about.
Sanjeev.
Whether Sanjay will show, whether they will show that kind of art,
Right.
whether they can show that kind of craft, we'll know in the next few days.
All right, the finer nuances you're saying need to be seen. All right. Okay, let me bring in Rakhi Suryaprakash now. Rakhi, hi Rakhi. Rakhi is the founder director of Sunshine Millennium, which deals with sustainable development. Rakhi, welcome to the conversation.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I've been following this for some time, and of course the whole euphoria of the new government and the 10-point agenda.
Yes.
So when you see this policy measure and this change, this hike, it comes really within his agenda of strengthening, making sure that the common man doesn't have too much of an expense on the whole, rather
Yes.
than it might hurt in the small run. But I'm sure that this policy, again, like how Jayalalitha did with our fixing our auto prices and things like that, it hurt in the beginning, and there was a lot of hue and cry again. But in the end, a lot of people were benefited by it. So again, it takes a little time for things like this. I'm sure a lot of people expected this kind of a hike and things like that when he put his agenda forward, and especially with the Petroleum Ministry and all. So it makes
Rakhi,
sense.
of course, Mr. Narendra Modi's first agenda is to get the economy back on track,
Right.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, do you think that, whatever has happened, of course, it's too early to tell, perhaps it's only been a week, but do you think we are moving in that particular direction? Because, the Sensex was very strong, the markets were rallying, have been rallying, the rupee became stronger, and an 11-month high. So do you think that, we're kind of moving in the right direction?
Yeah, at least if you see the Sensex and the rates of the rupees, definitely we are moving strong. At least the sentiment is there that everyone's having high hopes, and the sentiment of the stock market and the economy seems to be that we are moving. So whether the policy in the interim, when the sentiment is so high, but whatever the policy may be, the sentiment seems to be that we are doing well. So of course the economy automatically does well, and the rupee stabilizes.
All right, Rakhi, let me just get back Mr. Rao. She mentioned Jayalalitha's auto rickshaw, the decision she'd taken, but Jayalalitha has demanded a revision in the policy for fuel hike. Demystify that for us, please.
No, Jayalalitha has to make some demands, and I don't think this 50 paisa for diesel is not something that she can bargain with the center on. It is nice for a state government to say...
She's talking of the policy.
You see, you can't do that to a certain extent, because the whole economy is interconnected with the world financial markets, with oil markets.
It's very tough to do that.
Tough to do that. You must at least say...
In fact, what she has actually said is, in a statement, she said the oil pricing mechanism should be changed by factoring the cost of crude, both imported and domestically explored, and its refining costs. This is what she has said in the statement.
If I just may even put one idea, we say that every public sector unit is inefficient. We generally say that.
Yes.
Then how can you say these 3 oil companies are very efficient? You see, we have 3 public sector oil companies, which I have been saying wherever it's possible, that there are so much inbuilt inefficiencies in our refining capacities of public sector oil companies. How can Indian Oil become a paragon of efficiency, or Hindustan Petroleum? when you know that they're having gigantic offices, huge administrative costs, and you got to compare, for example, maybe it's not a good comparison. Say Reliance refinery at Jamnagar, it's got 30 million tons capacity or 60 million tons capacity. How many people they are employing? What is the output per man? And you find these figures are very, very poor. So part of the problem what Jayalalitha may say is, you cannot say that these three oil marketing companies or oil refining companies are highly efficient and the rest of the Indian public sector is very inefficient. The same inefficiencies are there, the same cost.
They are losing 4.41 rupees on every liter of petrol.
Yeah, the point that
sell.
Dr. Rao is trying to make is that, we also need reforms in the public sector.
Right.
Without which, it's going to be impossible. And, coming to the other point about the gas prices, that is going to be the other issue that the government has to tackle because, they're supposed to be doubled any time now, but it's been kept on hold. So, how is the government going to tackle that? So, it's not just one thing. There
The
are
balance between getting the economy back and the populist measures, that it seems to be the very thin line that the government seems to be
Of course, I
walking.
mean, you see in the state that, the UPA 2 finished and what Modi has basically inherited. He's inherited a crown full of thorns.
Yes, he's inherited a mess, so to speak.
Yeah, so I mean, you go anywhere. I mean, public sector reform, you talk about fuel hike, diesel, petrol, then you go to CNG, then you
Right.
got kerosene,
Right.
you got the rupee falling. So he's got to work from every angle. And as far as what Jayalalitha said, the mechanism is in place. You can't stop it. I mean, there's no way you can stop your crude prices from going up. If it's going up in the international market, it'll go up in India also.
Absolutely.
But what you need to do is you have to somehow contain it and ensure that it's not, it just doesn't come as a shock to the people. All of a sudden you go take it up, price goes up by 2 rupees or so. So that's the sort of balancing act that this government will have to do.
Exactly, the balancing act was. In fact, the Modi government, Mr. Modi, in fact, himself had spelled out an 8-point, agenda on how he plans to control the price rise. We have that as an infographic for you. Let us just play that on your screens. You can take a look at it, and if Dr. Pulla Rao could just explain that for us a little bit. Okay, this price stabilization fund.
That's not workable.
Not workable?
Yes.
Okay.
Not at all workable.
None of it is
that's not
workable,
at all
you're saying? The
workable.
National
It has not worked
Agricultural
anywhere. Okay, the creation of national agriculture marketing, that also is really not a workable proposition in a country like India, where two of the major crops are rice and wheat, and government fixes the price through the Food Corporation of India, what it buys, minimum price, there's an agriculture prices commission. These first 2 points worry me whether Modi has any knowledge of agriculture or agricultural economics. These first 2 points.
All right, all
They
right.
sound nice that you have a price stabilization fund. Prices fall, how many millions and millions of farmers are you going to monitor? You see, when there is how many, even today after 4 years, government has not paid farmers who lost their crops in cyclones and other things. These don't work. There
Okay.
are things which can work.
Okay.
Collection of real-time data on agriculture on the basis of farmers don't need that. Even today we follow the various other science. We follow which crops to wear when. I don't think our farmers require the Indian Meteorological Department to tell you. These 3 points, as I also have a farming background, I tell you straight away, these are practical, the first 3 things.
Let's move on to the next ones.
Special fast track courts to punish black marketeers. That also, you see, how many black marketeers you're going to catch. The entire, now you went on to the oil sector, for example. There are 30, 40, 50,000 oil outlets of government companies. They found 2 oil outlets were adulterating oil and all the 29,000 were good. That also doesn't work. Yes, now institutionalized financial support to farmers.
That's very important.
That you can do that. You can reduce the interest rate. You can even have a negative interest rate if you really want to help instead of going on to. That is one point where government can help because farmers are basically.
Suicide farmers.
Farmers commit suicides because of those credit. Credit is not available. Credit is available at high prices. That is one point he can do. Expanding cold storages can have something. Now transporting agri products through railways, if you put, I'm just giving you a small example, if you put say coconuts in Kerala and you want to bring them to Delhi, it takes 8 days, 10 days, 12 days. It doesn't work like that, If the railways can improve themselves, it works. Unbundle FCI operations, that's another bureaucratic thing, I don't know. But in all of this, institutionalized financial support to farmers, give them credit at cheaper prices. give them credit at no price. That's the best thing you can do. And also, you see now you have agroclimatic cropping. You know, we are growing crops which are not suitable climate-wise. To be very frank with you, you cannot grow sugarcane in India. There is not that kind of rain here. Sugarcane production, I'm just giving you one example.
Sure.
Indonesia, Cuba, all countries on the equator, like West Indies, where there's 150 inches of rain every year, they have 80 tons, 100 tons per acre. We have 30, 40 tons per acre in Maharashtra and other places where all irrigation, you're taking dry land and made into sugarcane land. Can Modi act on that? He can't act because they're all well set up. The 1,000 private sugar mills are so well set up that you can't oppose them.
Let me bring in Rakhi's reaction on that. Rakhi, you just heard Dr. Rao giving us his views on the on Modi's agenda to control price rise. What are your views?
I totally agree with a lot of points Dr. Rao mentioned. And yes, I think the financial aid to the farmers is a necessity that would really help more than anything else, because see, a person in an urban sector, anyone with a credit card seems to have access, whether they have an income or not, they have access to so much of credit. Okay, when a farmer if he had that credit, he could actually generate crops and generate food for so many people. He doesn't have access to credit. So that way, that's one point which would really help. And I think overall, there are so many bottlenecks in our infrastructure and in so many, the infrastructure lineup itself is filled with bottlenecks. It's first those have to be cleared. His move to bring down the GOMs, that's again cutting down on the bureaucracy. That makes sense. So I'm talking in that sense. Instead of bringing in the whole machinery and a lot of money being wasted on that, getting the financial aid to the person, be it the farmer or be it the common man, that seems to be the more important.
Sanjeev, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think, just going through the eight-point formula of Modi, I think the sense that I get is perhaps, what Modi wants to do is he wants to cut through the bureaucracy, as we've heard Rakhi say that. And I cut through it and, ensure that somewhere if we can bring down the prices at the domestic level, then half our problems will be solved. What happens right now, I mean, sir will know better. I've been a small farmer. I can tell you that if you're selling a product in your local market for 4 rupees, then you know that it's going to be sold in Delhi or a big place for 10 rupees.
Right.
Now, if somewhere down the line we can have a system where, instead of 4, the farmer gets 6 rupees, and instead of 10, it gets sold at 8 rupees. So, the farmer also benefits and the consumer also benefits. So, that sort of a healthy working relationship has to be established. But, in the current scenario, it's very tough, especially for a party like the BJP. Most of the business community, has been very supportive of the BJP. So, it's going to be an uphill task for them. As far as the point that, we saw over there of trying to bring in the food grains through rail network. At the moment, it looks almost impossible, simply because of the fact that, you don't have enough places where you can store these vegetables. You need, you need a lot of infrastructure, because as soon as your product is out, it needs to be kept in a certain temperature. Some need to go into deep freeze. So those sort of infrastructure capabilities are not present right now. If we have them, only then we can, have the access to take it through road or through rail. So that network comes in later. The first step is to try and, in fact, in Gujarat, one of the biggest states where a lot of, vegetables and crops are wasted, it's there everywhere. So the first step is to somehow try and bring in a system where we can save those crops. If you can save those crops, only then you can have some sort of a domestic level playing field where, prices come down.
But you do agree that it's a very difficult task, right? As Sanjeev was just saying, that Mr. Narendra Modi has inherited an economic mess as far as India is concerned. And now to balance this entire thing, where there was so much of hype when the government was coming in. Let's not forget that. The hype was huge. And how soon do you think he will be able to deliver?
See, as you rightly say, the hype was huge. not only for Narendra Modi, that there was a sense of relief that the other people were going. You see, the hype was created by that. Anything is better than this.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there was, unfortunately, you know, you people have seen it, read about it. There was a kind of arrogance in the last government, even when they were doing, you know, bad news was given in a very arrogant way. We do this, we like this.
Yeah, they were very insensitive, you know, to the people.
See,
Yeah.
there were lakhs of farmers who died. I'll just go a little bit, I'll give you. The National Advisory Council had 13, 14 members. Did not have a single representative of the farming community or the farming profession. Not a single person. And National Advisory Council directed the budget. The budget allotments, by and large, the big block expenditures were cleared by the National Advisory Council.
Right.
All the legislation which was introduced by the government, pushed through at great political cost, and finally it became a joke, like the Food Security Bill, were initiated by the National Advisory Council, who were an unelected body, who were basically city-based, NGOs and others with limited world experience. You know, very limited experience. They may be brilliant people, they may be sincere people. So Mrs. Gandhi followed that path, and Manmohan Singh and the government gave in. Many a time they tried to resist it, but they were not strong enough. So this mess, which you have said, well, Narendra Modi has it very easy, in fact, if you ask me. There are three factors. There is international peace to a certain extent, so oil price will not shoot up. There is peace in that Iraq is stabilizing, Iran is stabilizing, so oil will come in. Then the discovery of shale oil, and USA has become a net exporter this year of oil for the first time in 50 years. That has also acted as a dampener on oil prices.
Can I just interrupt you here for just asking you, you raised this point about oil. Do you think Mr. Modi will now try to reduce the dependence on international?
Exactly. In fact,
and explore
the 4 points. The 4 points that he is going to focus on now.
Right.
One of them is going to be how to bring about more exploration projects in India.
Right. Exactly.
We have very little data available on where all we can explore and bring oil from. Yeah. So we are going to see a lot of investment being done into R&D here, so that we have vast natural resources, but we just don't know how to tap it. So that's going to be also one focus area for the government, because if we can have a couple of more exploration sites, like if we had so if we have something like that, then it becomes much easier.
Right.
But then for that we've seen the previous government not open to these ideas, not willing to let others come and do the exploration bit for us at the cost of strategic security or whatever. But, tough times ask for tough measures. So I think this is the time where he actually has the mandate to go ahead and do something like that.
Right. I'll bring you back on this issue that you said that, it's easy for Modi. Let me bring in Rakhi here, because, she is dealing with sustainable development. Rakhi, Sanjeev just talked about, and, we were wondering if, Mr. Modi will want to reduce the dependence on international imports and try to explore resources within the country.
No, as part of his of the manifesto itself, it was like no dependence on any one source. I don't know how successful they'd be in not importing from anywhere else, but maybe they wouldn't just depend on oil, just depend on petrol. There is a emphasis on renewable energy as well.
Right. That
they will explore those options. But again, for that, you need to import PV panels and things like that. But yes, deep water exploration will definitely be encouraged and things like that. It's part of the agenda. I mean, from the manifesto itself, it's been part of the agenda. So I think they'd not depend on any one source, and they'd spread their risk. That seems to be the strategy generally.
All right.
He has it easy because basically one of the places where the entire economy became at a standstill is a lack of clearances. After Supreme Court intervention on many occasions, every project has to go through the Environment Ministry. If you want to even construct a building of 20 crores or 40 crores, I don't know the threshold, you must get environmental clearance. Right. So everything had to come to Delhi. And for publicity's sake, for media publicity's sake, I'm sorry to say this, Jairam Ramesh and others kept on even taking small state projects like stone quarries and clay mining and sand mines, small petty ones also, they brought it within the ambit of the central government. A man with a small quarry in a village, if it was, he had to come to Delhi to get clearance, if it was on the border, so many other things. Now, all these projects have been vetted by the 7 expert committees. They've all been cleared. The files are lying there for the last 6 months. And that's why Mr. Prakash Javadekar, Environment Ministry, all he has to do is release them. 1.5 lakh crores of projects will be released for completion, for production, for operation in the next 30 to 60 days. This will cause a massive economic activity and confidence. Okay, now you must have been reading about these things, you know, that all these projects were held up. They were not clear.
Over 200 projects were held up.
200, even more than that. You know, many of them take 2 years to clear, 3 years. Nobody says you should avoid environment scrutiny. You have the most strictest scrutiny, whatever is required, but have it on a time basis. You can't say 5 years, 6 years, as we like.
Time
have
bound.
it time bound. So there he'll get immediate success, number one. And that itself will create employment, that will create economic activities. And the second thing is, in the budget in July, he has to fine-tune some of these social welfare expenditures like Narega and other things, which Food Security Act of 1.5 lakh crores. Nobody wants 1 rupee rice a kilo. They want a job. Even a modest paying job they would prefer than saying, I'm giving you 30 kilos of rice and a dole of 1,000 rupees a month. Now you live.
And if with Narega we see something tangible in our country in terms of development, you know, in terms of assets.
Yeah, you see, UPA 1, when Narega was launched, it was basically just an activity, you know, where people got together and they dug holes and they made small ponds and stuff like that. But, you know, there was no synergy. That they tried to bring about in UPA 2, but by the time UPA 2 got down to bringing that synergy, we saw that, you know, the government had already become listless and not much work was happening. Yet they insisted on, you know, making the budget even bigger for Narega. Some states did manage to bag a lot of money out of it, and what we've seen is that, you know, particular state governments have allotted work in Narega, but they've taken credit for it. So, you know, the Congress actually ended up losing on both ends. So somewhere down the line, like the food security bill, we saw that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had put his foot down. He said there's no way they can, you know, give a food blanket to everyone. So all these schemes, you know, I mean, doing good is fine, but there has to be some sort of, you know, filtering process done so that, you know, it actually goes down to the poor. And as Dr. Rao was saying, it's better to, you know, teach a man how to fish than to feed him a fish, because then, you know, you fed him for a lifetime. So I think that approach is needed.
Let me just add to what Mr. Sanjeev said is, do you want the 1,000 rupee a month dole which UPA government offered, or some other government which says maybe we'll get you a job of 6,000 or 7,000 rupees a month? Everybody would prefer the later job. And what I can add to Mr. Sanjeev is, Narega became a low wage. 100 rupees a day will give you, sustain yourself, which is not correct also. It's not. Therefore, if they tweak these programs, if they make them asset-based as you have suggested, or
let them make toilets.
Yeah, let's see something on the ground.
Assets, schools,
hand pumps,
whatever.
Yeah, okay. Hand pumps still require you have to buy stuff.
Yeah, I know, but okay, toilets.
So if they do that, when you have an asset-based thing,
toilets
half the
in
money,
schools, so
half
that
the money will go for buying stuff from factories, which creates activity, which does these things, rather than digging holes and then filling them up again.
Yeah.
That's what the Narega was. They used to dig a mud hole and then fill it up next week and pond.
All right. Well, we are about to wrap up the conversation. Of course, the conversation continues on IndiaPostLive.com through your audio and video comments, your posts and your tweets at hashtag IndiaPostLive and @IndiaPostLive. But before we wrap up the conversation in the studio, let me get last final comments from Rakhi Suryaprakash. Rakhi, it seems that, you know, from everything that we've discussed, there seems to be a certain amount of hope and an optimism that the government is moving in the right direction. Reforms are continuing and probably there will be some curb on some populist measures. Your final comments for us, Rakhi.
Yeah, Modi has come in with a very strong mandate. He's got a position of power. He has to act from that position of power. So definitely there is there's hope from all quarters.
Right.
So he will move in the right direction. That's the hope, and we can see it in this move itself. It might be a small raise, but you know, when the economy is booming and when there is hope for a job, as Dr. Rao said, when people think that they will be employed at a good rate instead of a low wage thing,
right,
everyone would be happy. So
great.
It's more sentiment than reasoning. At present, the sentiments are very high. So
That's a very good.
let's
All right.
see how it works.
Right. Rakhi, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Rakhi, thank you so much. Dr.
you.
Rao, so well, Rakhi mentioned a booming economy, an upturned economy.
See, expectations are everything. Even if he meets 25% of the expectations, he'll get pass marks. But if he doesn't even meet that, then I'm afraid he'll cut a very sorry figure very fast. He has to show something in 100 days,
Right.
that he has moved something,
Right.
he has done something.
Yeah.
Right, so a huge task, Sanjeev, lots of expectations. I think that pressure of expectation is a huge, tremendous and a heavy pressure on his shoulders.
Of course, I mean, I think he knew it right from the word go, which
Yes.
is why we've seen he's asked all bureaucrats and everyone, right from party workers, to give their opinion. Now it's up to him to sift through it and see what are the best practical options, because as Dr. Rao said, if it doesn't deliver in 100 days, then his image is going to take a beating.
Right. All right. Thank you so much. I would like to thank Rakhi. Rakhi, thank you so much for joining the conversation with your inputs.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. I would like to thank Dr. B. Pulla Rao, renowned economist, for talking to us and demystifying a lot of those issues that we read in the papers. Thank you so much. And of course, Sanjeev Ratna Singh, thank you so much for coming and talking to us with your insights. The conversation continues on IndiaPostLive.com with your, as I said, audio and video comments and your posts. We look forward to your tweets as well on the issue. Thank you so much.